I've been running this YouTube channel since 2020 and it's been growing steadily since then. And as the channel has grown a little bit bigger now, I am getting more and more comments and questions from people who are asking whether or not it's worth starting a YouTube channel for themselves. And the question typically revolves around, I'm interested in starting a cycling or an outdoors YouTube channel. How much money does yours make, and is it worth me spending the time doing one? I think a lot of people are curious as to whether they can turn their passion for cycling or going outdoors, hiking, camping, whatever the case may be, into a side income or maybe even a career. Now, if you're just wanting to upload videos to YouTube for a bit of fun, to share memories with your family and friends, then just crack on, keep doing that. But if you're the sort of person who's wanting to pursue this and maybe turn it into an income or a career or even a business, then this video is going to be for you. The first thing I want to discuss is the amount of people that are on YouTube these days. Now, let's be honest, pretty much every man and his dog has a YouTube channel now, and they all upload videos of what they're up to. And it seems to have got pretty saturated. So the question is, has it become too saturated for you to start making videos on YouTube? My answer is yes, and also no. There are so many people making outdoors videos now that it is very difficult to stand out. So my advice would be, if you are wanting to stand out, you have to be different. You have to bring something unique to the channel that nobody else has done, or very few people have done. It might be an idea you've seen elsewhere, or something that you're particularly interested in that you don't see covered that much. This has to be your priority, because if you're just doing run-of-the-mill, same videos as everybody else does, you aren't going to build traction. People aren't going to come and watch your videos because they've already got millions of different options out there to choose from. If yours don't stand out, they are just going to disappear behind the YouTube algorithm and no one's going to watch. So for you, you need to make your videos stand out in one way or the other. Here are a few examples of things that you could try. The first is try exploring different locations. If you go to the same super popular locations as many other hundreds of thousands of YouTubers, your video is not going to get big views. If you go to somewhere slightly different or explore a location that maybe nobody's thought of going to, you might find that you can start to build a bit of traction that way. This is something that I'm really focusing on. When I first started this channel, I was going cycling, bikepacking in mostly fairly local locations to myself and keep revisiting the same locations as well. Partly because I couldn't afford to go on spectacular trips. I didn't have the budget to do it. But now I'm moving towards trying to go to places that other YouTubers haven't been to try and stand out that little bit more. The second is to try and focus on a different aspect of the same subject that you're interested in. So if it's cycling, for example, instead of just going out on a bike ride like everybody does and film their adventures, why don't you instead tell a story or go somewhere with a historical interest so that you can relive your passion of cycling through history? There's so many different things that you can do. You just got to think outside the box. Another great example is going cooking. I've seen a couple of YouTubers now who go out on bikepacking trips, and instead of focusing on the adventure, they focus on the camping setup and the cooking equipment they take, and they make a really nice meal. That's very different, and if you want to stand out from the crowd, you're going to have to think a little bit more differently. Number 3 is to invest in some high quality camera equipment. As well as that, you need to invest in some good audio equipment, which we'll talk about. The reason you should think about doing this is it's another way to stand out. Even if you're doing the same sort of thing as everybody else, if the quality is really good, that can set you apart. This is something that I focused on. It was my main priority when I started this YouTube channel. It was, how can I make these videos the best quality possible and try and make them some of the best on YouTube? And ever since that, I've been getting more and more obsessed, buying more and more expensive equipment, learning how to use it, professional camera equipment, professional drone equipment, big microphones that I take out to get really good ambient sound. And I think now when you watch some of my cinematic bikepacking films, they are up there as some of the best quality ones on YouTube, which has really helped me stand out. Now, again, you don't have to spend loads of money to do this. This is just something I've become quite obsessed with, so do spend quite a fair bit of money on. But if you're wanting to stand out, you do need to think about the quality. The number one thing you need to think about quality-wise is the audio. The worst thing ever, I've said this before, is if you watch a YouTube video, even if it's a great looking video, when all you can hear is wind noise from the GoPro and you can hardly hear someone talking, you just want to switch off. Invest in a good lav mic. I've got one on here. This is a Rode wireless one. Or just a shotgun mic with a dead cat on top. That's something that stops the wind from getting into the mic and making that awful noise. Just by doing that, you will set yourself apart from 99% of cycling and outdoors YouTubers, just by improving the audio quality. And the last way to stand out is tell your story, tell your point of view. We're all different and we all come to the outdoors from different backgrounds, different perspectives, so it's worth telling yours. You might find that you gather a lot of good followers that way because they all agree with you, and you also might find that your videos get lots of views if your views don't align with a lot of other people's. You'll get a lot of arguments in the comments, which might not be something you're after, but it does help with the engagement and get more views on your video. This is something that I did when I did my touring bike versus gravel bike video. I said that I didn't think touring bikes were cool, and the amount of people getting at me in the comments was quite funny, really. But that video's done really well. It's tens of thousands of views, and it didn't cost me anything to make. It was just looking at two bikes and deciding which one I thought was best. Now that you've decided how you're going to stand out, you need to have realistic expectations of running a YouTube channel. It is not easy money, and it is not a get-rich-quick scheme. In fact, it's bloody hard work. So if you are wanting to do this, you have to be prepared to put in the work. It can take years and years and years to build up your YouTube channel to the point that you're even going to be able to monetize it. So you need 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 watch hours. And that for a lot of people will take several years. And are you prepared to be putting in the work week after week, month after month, for years on end, just so that you can monetize it and probably earn not very much in the beginning? It's pretty much guaranteed that you are going to lose quite a lot of money before you start making money from YouTube. It took me years before I got my channel monetized, and the amount of trips that I was going on, I was paying for all of those out of my pocket, paying for the camera equipment, so I was already going to be thousands of pounds down before I even started generating an income. So this is something you have to be aware of. If you are wanting to start your own YouTube channel, even if you're going to be frugal, unless you've got kit already, it is going to cost you a fair bit of money, and it might be a long time before you can recoup any of that back. So if you want to make a go of this, you do have to be prepared to put in the work. This has basically become a full-time job for me, as well as my actual full-time job. Any free time that I get, I end up spending editing videos, writing scripts, replying to emails and comments, or going on adventures, sometimes being away from my family for days or weeks on end. So it's definitely not easy. You do have to be prepared to be putting in the extra hours around your normal everyday life. Now don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining about this at all. Being paid to do your hobby is still better than just having a hobby. The fact that you can go out and do something you love and then get money back for it is pretty cool. So this is definitely something you should be thinking about, but you just have to be realistic with the expectations before you get started. So let's talk about money. How much money does this YouTube channel make? Now, I get between 50 and 100,000 views a month, which is pretty decent. And the channel now has roughly 15,000 subscribers. So I think it's a fairly achievable figure for most people if you're willing to put in the work. It will take time. It's not like I'm in the hundreds of thousands or millions of subscribers where you think that's probably never going to happen for me. So you can probably get to those sort of figures if you put in the work. So what can you expect? I am monetized, of course. I have ads running on all my videos. And this channel makes between £200 and £400 every month, and that is it. So that sort of money isn't enough to live off, of course. It's hardly enough to pay most people's electric bill as it is. But there are other ways of making money on YouTube, which I do use, and I'll talk about as well. Now, those coupled with the ad revenue, which I get every month pretty much without fail, is actually a fairly substantial amount, but it's not enough by far to live comfortably off. But it's nice to know that you can achieve those sort of figures, and of course it's nice to have alongside your normal everyday job. And at some point in the future, as the views go up and the channel increases, there will be a point where I earn more from YouTube than I do from my job, and that's when you can start to ask the question, is it worth me now pursuing this full time? I bet there's a lot of people who are watching this at this point who think, God, is that all you get? The amount of videos you put out, the amount of time you put into the videos, that's not worth it. And you're absolutely right, it is not worth it. Even if all my videos cost me nothing to make, which isn't true, just factoring in my time, I'm well below minimum wage when you think about all the time I'm putting into these videos. So it definitely isn't worth it. But for me, it's a bit like an investment. Putting in a couple of £100 into a savings account every month isn't going to change your life. But if you do it for a long time and it starts to grow and your income starts to grow, you start putting in a little bit more, start reinvesting, eventually you'll get to a point where it's not a laughing matter anymore. And that's something that I'm hoping is going to happen over the next 5 to 10 years. So that extra few £100 a month is nice to have, but how else do I make money on the channel? There's a few different ways, and some of them can be even more lucrative than the ad revenue. The first is through affiliate links. You'll have seen most people do this nowadays. They have a link to a product they use or something they've recommended in a video. You click it, you can buy it on Amazon, like Amazon Associates is an example of one, where if you buy it, it doesn't cost you any extra, and the creator behind the video where you saw the link gets a little bit of commission. It's like 2% or something, sometimes less than that. So you don't get a huge amount from that, but I do get money from that every month. All of my gear that I list is linked via affiliate links. So anytime someone clicks it and buys a product that I've recommended, I do get money from it. So once you've set up that process, it is kind of like free money. You've done it once and you're always going to get paid for it, which is really nice. There are other affiliate programs out there. There's absolutely loads. I use one called AvantLink, which is a US based one. That was really useful for me just to get in touch with a lot of brands and also get slightly higher commission rates than maybe I would get on Amazon. So if people buy a tent that I've recommended, like the Nemo Dragonfly, and they buy it straight from Nemo, I'm going to get more money than if they buy it on Amazon. So another thing to think about, other affiliate sites like that. So how much do you earn from affiliate links? It does vary massively, but it's probably less than you think. Unless you have a really high volume, i.e. hundreds of thousands of people buying something, or very high value products like into the thousands of pounds mark that people are buying, you're not going to be generating a decent income from that. I have had affiliate links for other things in the past unrelated to this channel, and some of the things that I was selling was sort of £2 or £3, and I might get 5 to 10p commission on some of those things. So if you're selling 50 of those at 10p, it's still pretty rubbish. However, if you are selling something a bit more expensive like this camera, which is in the thousands of pounds, 5 to 10% sometimes of that value is a really nice chunk. So it does depend on what you're selling and the volume, but it's worth experimenting anyway. An extra few quid in your pocket is always nice to have. And next, it's sponsorships. Now, this can be an amazing way of making money, and it can be fairly lucrative if you get in with the right companies. So a sponsorship effectively is where you get a brand to either give you products or give you money to talk about their products, which is really good in the cycling industry because there's so many things that I use naturally that I really like, or brands that I want to get on board with and try their products. So just by having an audience, I can present that product and effectively get money for doing it, either through a commission scheme or through getting just free stuff, or by actually invoicing the company and getting some money back, which can be much more than the ad revenue if you do it well. There are months where I've earned significantly more from sponsorships than I have from ad revenue. That may be 500, 600 quid, but that plus the ad revenue, you're starting to look about £1,000 mark, which is pretty good before we even factor in the affiliate links and other things I'm going to talk about. So how do you attract brands and sponsors to your channel? The first thing you need to do, and probably the most obvious thing, is to grow your audience. You aren't going to be able to get brands on board if you've only got a few hundred subscribers. You probably can start approaching some at the 1,000 subscriber mark, but more than likely you're going to need to be in the tens of thousands before brands start to see benefit in working with you. You'll be surprised how many emails you will get, even at the early stages in the thousands of subscribers, from brands that want to give you stuff and work with you to sell their products. And 99.9% of these brands will be utter rubbish. The amount of stuff that you get approached with, especially in the early days, is just absolutely terrible and usually not even relevant to the stuff that you're talking about. The amount of weird and wonderful things I've had thrown into my inbox from strange small companies, often Chinese companies, you just think, I'm never going to work with this, and if I was going to take this stuff, it's probably going to damage my reputation more than it's going to benefit me. And that's something you really need to think about. Just because someone's willing to give you something, or maybe even willing to pay you to work with them, doesn't mean that you should. You have to think about your reputation and your viewers as well. The worst thing you can do is to try and sell something that you don't like or has had no relevance to anything you've ever talked about, because your audience are going to know it's disingenuous and they're going to leave. They are the most important thing, not working with every brand that wants to work with you. As well as receiving inbound emails from brands that want to work with you, as I have said, they're usually pretty rubbish. I found really good success in actually reaching out to brands that I want to work with or have products that I've been using for a very long time. I used to work in a job where a lot of my time was spent trying to drum up new business, so something I always used to do was find out who I needed to be speaking to, how to get their contact information, and this is something that I've kind of learned from and migrated into my own life, and it's been really a useful exercise. Just getting hold of the marketing director of a bikepacking bag company or a bike brand has been a really good way for me to get my hands on products, even if I'm not getting paid, just so that I can get my foot in the door of a really high quality brand and then showcase what I can do. Then it makes it a lot easier the second time around when I want to contact them. They know who I am, they've seen my work, and then I can start to negotiate better deals going forward. And probably the best way of earning money, if you've got the right mindset or if you've got the skills needed, is to turn your channel into a business. The reason that brands want to work with you and sponsor you is because you've now developed an engaged audience and potentially a large audience of people who want to listen to you, trust what you say, and like the things that you're talking about. So the brands find value in that because it's basically advertising to a niche market of people who they know are going to buy their product. But you can also use that to your advantage as well. If you make something or if you've got a specific skill or service that you can offer, you can advertise that directly to your customers, which are now your viewers and your subscribers. And that can be a really good way of making money, and that can dwarf anything that you make from ad revenue. This is something that I've always been thinking about, and I haven't quite arrived at the thing I want to do yet, but I do have several ideas running in the background, and I'd actually like to know your thoughts on this. So if you have any ideas or suggestions that you think someone like myself who runs a cycling and bikepacking channel could do, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. It might help, even if it just validates my ideas of things I've been wanting to do. If a lot of people say the same thing and it's something they might be interested in buying or doing, then I might do it. So please do give your suggestions in the comments. So now we've talked about the money side of YouTube, I want to talk to you about something you might not have thought about, which is that as your channel grows, so too does the amount of people emailing you, sending you messages, leaving you comments, which can start to snowball quite drastically to the point where it's almost unmanageable. And even at the size channel I am at the moment, the amount of emails I get from people, Instagram messages, YouTube comments, I just simply struggle to keep up to them all. At the moment, I think I'm on top of pretty much everything, but it's very easy for you to become a bit overwhelmed with the amount of contact you need to do, because at the end of the day, most of us are just going to be a one-man team, and getting back to everybody is nigh on impossible. So at some point you will have to draw the line and say, I just simply cannot respond to all these comments anymore or get back to the emails. The problem with that, though, is that you are in a very tricky dilemma, which is, should I be responding to this person? Are they a good use of my time? Probably not in the short term, but equally you want to keep your audience engaged. So it's also important that you do show your respect to these people. And it's very difficult to find that balance, as I say. Now, I've got two opinions on this, really. The good and the bad. The good is that it's great that you have people wanting to talk to you and get information from you and get your opinion on something. So they obviously trust you and value your opinion and your time, which is really cool. And it's obviously going to help you over the long term if you do respond to people and show your appreciation, because over the long term, they're going to want to come back to you and they'll recommend you to their friends and they'll get that good rapport with you, which is undoubtedly going to be useful. But on the other side, it's a huge time sink replying to everybody. There's only one of you, more than likely, and potentially hundreds of people that want your time. And you kind of got to ask yourself the question, when the channel gets to a certain point that you're really struggling to get all the basic tasks done, is it worth me responding to all these things? Is it worth my time? And is this just someone who keeps coming back wanting to take time from you and doesn't necessarily benefit you? At some point, you do have to make that distinction. At the moment, I'm pleased to say I think I've responded to everybody that's ever got in contact with me, but I am finding it really hard now, where if I leave it for a couple of days, I'm then inundated with stuff I have to do. So this is something you just need to be thinking about. It's not just about the monetary side, it's also about the responsibility that comes with it. And as well as people wanting your attention virtually, you will find that people start to recognize you out in public. And I've been having this for a few years now, especially when I'm out on bike trips in popular locations. People will come up to me and introduce themselves and say, "Oh, I've seen you on YouTube," which is really cool. But it does get to a point where it kind of comes with side effects in that if you're ever out in public, you always feel you kind of have to be on duty and put your best self forwards because people know who you are. And I've had it a few times now where I've been out with my kids and with my girlfriend and people have come up to me, and it's always been very pleasant, don't get me wrong. But I then start to think, well, now you kind of know where I live and you've seen my children and my girlfriend and you know a bit more about my private life, and I don't necessarily have the same level of privacy as I used to. And is that something that I really want for the rest of my life? And if the channel were to grow massive, this would affect my everyday. And it's just kind of something you need to think about. It does sound ridiculous, even at the size channel I am now, that people do notice me when I'm out in the street, but it is true, it does happen. And it's just something else you've got to consider before you dive into making videos and trying to turn it into a career. Is that something that you can live with? If it is, then go for it. But if it's something that might affect you and something that might make you uncomfortable, probably something you need to think about. So that is the reality of running a YouTube channel. It is not easy, there's a lot of hard work involved, and it can be all-consuming. As well as that, the pay is pretty rubbish when you factor in the amount of effort and time you put in. However, if you're passionate about something or you really enjoy making films and talking to the camera, this definitely should be something that you give a go. I've been lucky enough now to go all over the world, make adventure films for you at home and inspire you hopefully to go out on your bike. And as a result, I've now been able to generate an income from that. So that is really cool and something I'm going to keep pushing to hopefully turn into a career at some point. However, I really wanted to show you that it isn't easy. So many people on YouTube will make it look like their lives are amazing because all they do is put together a few-minute video every now and then and their life's fantastic. It just doesn't work like that. It's like anything. You've got to put in the effort, the consistency, hard work, and you've got to be true to yourself and be different. Otherwise, you're just going to disappear into the pack with everybody else. I hope you found that video useful. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.